I think this was a good starter before the coffee break we had with these criteria. And there are some organizational things I would like to give you some hints, because we were asked if we can see the slides afterwards, which are presented here today. And they are online available after the conference, so you will be able to read everything that we are presenting here today. Another question or another hello, because we haven't said hello to our friends behind us in the box over there. Hello. Corinne and Aude Valérie, thank you so much. I have the feeling that we do not speak too fast. It's fine? Okay, great. So after the break, now we spoke about criteria before the break, and perhaps we might think that how to assess this criteria would be the next. However, we thought it would be interesting also to speak about those bodies, we call them, which are responsible for expert registered. It says lists in the program here on the paper, but Nico told us that we're speaking about register, and I would like to confirm this, that we speak about register. And well, we will hear about the criteria for those bodies. You heard already in the first sector that we have different bodies who are acting in this field. And now it's up to Rafa Orellana, who is online in Barcelona. Hello, Rafa, how are you?
Hello, bonjour.
Yeah, and yeah, Rafa, you look good. So it's fine. The first time I see you with a suit again and tie. So great. So you are prepared, I think, and he will be joined by Sasha. We always say Darlin, Gülhus. I always say Sasha. And yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing your presentations. And I heard that Rafa, you will start.
That's it. I'll start. Thank you. Bonjour, je ferai mon intervention en français puisque c'est la langue dans laquelle je suis plus souple et plus tranquille. Donc je ferai comme ça et j'espère que la traduction, l'interprétation soit OK et vous comprenez tout ce que je dis parce que c'est vrai que
Rafa,
je parle français.
Rafa, there's no translation, so we need to... I don't know what we need to do.
You have to go to channel 2, I think.
Oh.
Channel 2 is French.
Yes, channel 2.
No?
They can't
so
hear him.
we have a problem that the interpreters cannot hear what you're saying, Rafa. Just give us a second.
Okay.
Okay, can you speak again, Rafa?
Yes. Hello, hello. I'm Rafa Orellana, and I don't know if the translation is.
Yeah, will tell us a little bit about the weather in Barcelona today.
It's a great weather.
Okay, so that means the temperature. Temperature in Barcelona?
Temperature now, I think it's almost 22 degrees.
Okay. Well, you should have come to Cologne then. It's really nice outside here.
Yes. I hope you are enjoying your stay in Cologne.
Okay. So that was a good talk to you. And now you can start because they can hear you from the interpretation. And
okay.
Those who do not understand French, please use these phones then. Okay? Let's go ahead, Rafa.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bonjour tout le monde.
Good morning, everyone.
Je vais faire, comme je disais avant,
As I
mon
was saying
intervention en
previously,
français, puisque
I'm
c'est la
going
langue
to give my
que je parle
presentation
mieux,
in French because it is
que
the
mon
foreign language I
anglais.
speak best.
Donc, je vais faire comme
At
ça.
least, definitely
En premier lieu,
better than
je ne peux
English.
pas commencer mon
So,
intervention sans
I
remercier tous les organismes qui sont engagés dans cet intéressant projet. Le EEI, EuroExpert et même la Haute Cour régionale de Cologne où se tient la conférence de consensus de cette, comme je dis, intéressant projet. Aussi, je voudrais remercier très vivement le secrétariat de ce projet, en concret Nathalie et Aurélie, qui ont été tout le temps en train de nous aider pour réussir cette réalité d'aujourd'hui, les documents, les réunions. Donc, un grand merci pour vous. Donc, je commence, comme cette slide dit, notre travail consiste à définir les conditions, les critères, les normes que doivent respecter, avoir les organismes chargés des registres d'experts. Quel est leur rôle et quel est leur contenu, quoi. Alors, nous, les axes sur lesquels on a travaillé sont ceux qui apparaissent maintenant dans cette slide-là. Comme vous avez vu, il y avait la question de what. C'était ce qu'on va faire. Who, c'est qu'est-ce qu'on va faire. Et le what, cette boîte rose qui est à droite, standards to be met by bodies in charge of experts, c'est ce que les autres groupes, le 1 et le 3, ont fait. Comme je disais avant, nous avons eu 3 axes principaux dans nos débats. Ce sont la présentation de l'organisme en débattant leur fonction et la composition, c'est-à-dire les personnes qui doivent être les responsables ou les membres de cet organisme. Et en deuxième lieu, le contrôle de cet organisme, quels sont les mécanismes pour le contrôler, et le résultat de la création de cet organisme, c'est-à-dire les registres. On ne peut pas parler de liste, je suis d'accord. Donc, on va parler de registres, qui sont ceux qui vont être créés par l'organisme dont on va parler dans ce deuxième groupe. Alors, là, il faut dire que c'est évident qu'un organisme de ce type qui établit les critères pour les listes, pour les registres d'experts, doit se baser sur les grands principes du procès judiciaire, c'est-à-dire le droit à un procès équitable, garantir les droits fondamentaux et surtout la protection des justiciables et la bonne administration de justice, garantir évidemment la qualité de la justice, et surtout aussi, quant à la tâche des experts, garantir la libre circulation de services ainsi que la libre prestation de services pour les experts, c'est-à-dire la libre circulation de pouvoir s'établir là où on veut. Et à ce sujet, il faut parler de l'arrêt Peñarroja, qui déjà, au 17 mars 2011, arrêt de la Tribunal de justice européen, qui a établi
by a European
peut-être
court that established
l'élément initial
the initial
qui a donné lieu à ce projet-là, d'établir des listes
to this
d'experts,
project, a list
des
of
registres
experts
d'experts,
or a register of experts,
avec des normes, et en essayant d'harmoniser tout ce qui existe ou qui peuvent exister dans la géographie européenne.
The standards and the rules that already exist within the European Union in the different member states. Next slide, please.
C'est parce que là, il y a une avant.
Next one.
Bon, et la suivante. I think there is one before this one. The one that talk about results. It's not there, it has disappeared. Well, no problem. Pas de problème. Il y avait une slide avant de celle-ci à laquelle je devais faire référence qui parle des résultats, des conclusions que le groupe de travail, à qui aussi je remercie par sa tâche et son engagement, nous avons fait, nous avons vu, nous avons débattu et donc on a arrivé après la recherche et l'étude des différents questionnaires et de la réalité de chaque pays de l'Union européenne, on a arrivé à certaines conclusions que je vous indique. En premier lieu, on a vu qu'il existe des différentes règles de fonctionnement des organismes chargés des registres d'experts dans les pays membres de l'Union européenne qui ont répondu à l'enquête. Ça veut dire qu'on a vu que dans les pays où il y a des registres, où il y a des organismes qui gèrent ces registres, il y a vraiment des différentes règles de fonctionnement. Donc, il ne nous a pas été possible de déduire la procédure la plus commune pour la création de ces organismes chargés des registres d'experts dans les différents pays européens. Il y a une autre conclusion, la troisième, qui nous indique que certains pays de l'Union européenne n'ont pas d'organisme chargé des registres d'experts. Donc déjà, c'est une conclusion importante pour nous. Mais dans les pays où il existe des organismes chargés des registres d'experts, certains d'entre eux ont une réglementation très stricte, très spécifique de leur fonctionnement, tandis que d'autres pays ont une réglementation de ces organismes plus basique, plus générale et pas si spécifique. Donc, on a deux types de réglementation pour ces organismes-là. Donc, avec cette division entre une réglementation des organismes plus stricts et une autre de plus basique, de plus générale, on a vu que les pays qui disposent d'une réglementation la plus intense, la plus spécifique, sont ceux qui ont une nomination d'experts de la part du juge directement par les tribunaux. Cependant, les pays qui ont une réglementation plus générale sont ceux qui ont aussi la possibilité et acceptent la désignation des experts des partis. Par exemple, en Espagne, où je peux déjà vous dire que la plupart des experts qui interviennent dans la Cour sont des experts des partis. Il y a presque aucune désignation d'experts des tribunaux, excepte de l'aide juridictionnelle, etc. Mais la plupart des experts sont des partis, comme dans les pays anglo-saxons, États-Unis et Grande-Bretagne.
English-speaking countries, in the States, in Great Britain, it's the same.
Et au contraire, les pays qui n'ont pas, comme j'ai dit, une priorité dans des experts désignés par les tribunaux, par la Cour, par le juge, là c'est où la réglementation est plus laxe, plus générale, ne pas si spécifique. Une autre conclusion est que les organismes chargés des listes peuvent provenir de l'administration publique, mais aussi, comme ça se passe par exemple aux Pays-Bas, des entités privées. Et cet organisme-là, la conclusion sur les membres est que l'organisme, la composition de cet organisme-là est normalement constituée par membres du pouvoir judiciaire, des hauts fonctionnaires ou des représentants d'organismes publics qui ont une relation avec la justice, par exemple le ministère de la Justice. Aussi, on a vu qu'il y a toujours un contrôle des décisions prises par l'organisme responsable des registres d'experts. Le système de demande d'inscription sur les registres d'experts par le candidat est également différent dans les pays de l'Union européenne. Et aussi, pour finir, les données des experts inscrits sur les registres sont différents dans chaque pays de l'Union européenne. Donc, on voit déjà, après l'étude de ces questionnaires-là et la réalité des différents pays de l'Union européenne, qu'il y a une diversité, une très grande diversité dans la réglementation de ces organismes-là. Et maintenant, je passe la parole à Sacha qui va vous expliquer la présentation de l'organisme, la partie numéro 1 de notre travail. Sacha,
that's part 1 of our work. Sacha, you have the floor.
So you don't have to applause all the time. I'm Sascha Dalen-Gilhuis. I'm from the Netherlands, and I'm director of an organization of judicial experts in the field of environmental law and spatial planning. It's very distinct. 50 experts work in my organization, and it's paid by the government. That is really unique. You never see that in Europe. And it's dedicated only to judges. Judges can ask us and they don't have to pay. Thank you, Rafa, for the introduction. I take it from here. I start with the presentation of the body. It's how it manifests itself, how you see it as an organization. And it has basically two aspects. It's the organization itself. Is it regulated? Does it have statutes? And the other thing that we discussed is how it's functioning, how it's, that is the functions, but how its function is also part of the investigation, and how it's composed, because you have different tasks to register an expert. You need an opinion on if the expert is eligible to be registered, but you also need a board because you're an organization. So there are different roles and different types of expertise that you need to run this organization. Organization you must see like It could be very small, or it could be, like my organization is a register in itself, and it's quite big, but it's also composed of the experts itself. But forget about the Netherlands, because it's really, it's rare. I mean, it's only an example. The organizational functions. The body, we did not ask this question specifically in the questionnaire, because it always happens like that. You make a questionnaire and you think of the main topics that you want to know, and then when you work with the people and you go in depth, you say, oh, we should have asked that. But luckily, within EEI, we have a lot of countries represented. We have been working with EuroExpert, and we have so many people who know about the local proceedings that we were able to disseminate a common ground anyway. And that is why we found that a body that is registering is expected to organize itself. That's a minimum. Also, it needs to have regulations and processes to be, also that is important, because there needs to be control of the body, but we'll talk about that later on. The processes that they are responsible for is, of course, registration. But registration can follow with re-registration. It's not always the case, because some countries, they just register it, and you can, as long as you like, can be in the register. But there are specific countries that say, no, every 5 years you need to re-register it. That will be the topic of Working Group 3. But also deregistration is a task, because if an expert is not functioning and we get complaints, you need to be able to remove a person from the register. We thought about that as well. Registration and re-registration was a topic that was asked in the questionnaire, so we will give you the answers later on. In these discussions with the working group, some interesting points were added that are not commonly found, and we call them added value for the project, because there are bodies that give extras to their registered expert members. If you pay a fee to be on the register, it is nice that that registering body organizes sometimes things that are very helpful for your profession. So intervision courses about court proceedings, for instance, more general topics can be organized by a register, but it's rare. It's in the Netherlands, of course. But there are other countries who provide courses and minimal variations on that, but it will be in our recommendations to think about that, because it's added value for your money. And it's also very good to have, like we are here now, talking with each other about the profession. It's really enriching. So our recommendations, you see them here, we really advise to make operating statutes with internal organization, composition, functions of each member, and how the decision-making system is actually functioning. And also, we would like to stress that it's very important to make the registers of experts public. It's not, throughout Europe, it's not the case. Sometimes it's only available for judges or for lawyers, but it should be open to the public. We recommend that. For the registration, deregistration, and re-registration processes, we recommend that the verification is needed if the applicant meets the pre-established requirements, and we establish an action protocol for periodic verifications of that. It was like when you want to re-register, you need to evaluate periodically if the expert still meets the standards. And it's also, for the deregistration, important that you register complaints, requests. It's politely stated here, but it can be really complaints that you need to process, and you need to build fair proceedings, how to deal with those cases. So that is our recommendation on the registration process. And as I said, we recommend that you promote that experts meet each other in various forms, courses or meetings for intervision, for example, to exchange knowledge. But this is not based in the questionnaire, so you won't find it there. We have the slide now with discussion points, but with I would like to ask Rafa, will we put that to the end? Because it was really very good working for the first working group. There was a lively discussion at the end, and we can put it all together. So I would like to skip to the next slide, and we come. Oh, it's not there anyway. So, composition of the body. That was the second part of my first part of the speech, and that is who is working in this body, and what does he do, and where does he come from, he or she. Physical members, by that we mean persons. We think it could be judges, experts themselves, lawyers, academics, and others. Sorry if a prosecutor here is called others, but prosecutors, employees of chambers of agriculture, architects, and other professions. That is based on the German example. You can think of more professions, but this is the most common list that we came up with. You can also think of institutional members to be part of the body in the board or in the commissions that actually scrutinize an expert's CV or credentials. And then it's really connected to the competences that are needed. We found that, and that was based in the questionnaire, roughly less than half of the countries say that the technical knowledge is very important to be able to give an opinion on a CV of a technical expert. So professionals, and that can also be scientific professors or other scientific members of the university, for example, can be very well equipped to give a meaningful report on technical CVs. Sometimes it's in my organization there are mathematicians and there are physicists and there are, well, it's so hard to give a true opinion of, is this a good physicist? You need someone special to be able to give a judgment on that. You can organize that in the body. You can organize that as a cellular thing outside of the body. So you can ask people to come in and help you in commissions or something. You don't have to have all the technical knowledge in your body. That would be impractical. So you can use satellites. It's more figure of speech, but you can ask a very wide range of persons to help you judge the CV or the person. Procedural knowledge was the other important competence that we have found, and it's also half of the member states say that it's very important to have the procedural knowledge, and that procedural knowledge is actually guaranteed by the members, the persons that are on the board, because they are practicing, they know what is to be expected of an expert in terms of practice, how they need to report, what do I need when I'm a judge? You know what you need, so you can be very skillful in being able to scrutinize the eligibility. Okay. We have a recommendation based on the previous overview of what we found. Magistrates who exercise the jurisdictional function, magistrates who exercise an executive and non-judicial function, would be very useful. Public prosecutors, lawyers, and court clerks are recommended to be on the board. Somehow, we call it the board, but you can call it anything. And for institutional members to deliver the technical part of the judgment is expert organizations and sectorial organizations, and that is meant professional associations, kind of that, like they have knowledge of, in-depth knowledge of the actual field of expertise that we're talking about. And this will be...
Donc ça, nous y reviendrons tout à l'heure.
Rafa will...
Rafa?
Oui.
Yes. We decided for this presentation to make a break within that presentation to have a discussion over 3 topics. The first discussion point was to ask ourselves whether the registering body should establish a fair system of payment or remuneration. When I say remuneration system, I'm not saying that some prices or some fees should be set. What I'm saying is that we should establish a process that allowed the expert to be paid. Because we could have following situation that a French expert goes to the Netherlands, and then he has to make sure that he knows how he's going to be paid. So that he knows how he has to calculate his fees. Is it an hourly rate? Is it a daily rate? And the question was really, should the registering body establish in its regulation a way to pay the expert in a transparent manner so that the expert knows what to do and how much he will receive? That would be one question. Should we now start the discussion, or should we do it rather at the end of our presentation? Sasha, what do you think? Or Aurélie, or whoever is responsible for this type of question.
Rafa, to be sure that I understood the discussion point, you think we have an echo in can you switch off when I'm speaking, Rafa? And then you put it on when no, it's somebody else who has the mics on. No? Okay. So I try to understand your first discussion point to reduce it to cross-border things. Is this correct? For example, if somebody is appointed from another country in Spain and they have no system for payment in this country, could perhaps the registration body a helping body for resolve such problems? Is this the question or is this the discussion point?
Pas exactement.
Not really. The idea is to establish a remuneration system or payment system so that the expert who doesn't know how it works in that country, he would know how to get paid. We, in our working group, we wondered whether we should have a whole proceedings put in place for procedure put in place for payment.
Of your group in the opinion that this is a task of a registration body? Sorry? Yeah?
No.
Yeah. Okay, so there is Rafa, I do not see any raising hands to this point, and it's a little bit perhaps complicated to this. Perhaps I'm starting with an easy question. Okay. Okay, there's still nothing. Okay, so Rafa, first of all, I heard that you still have some things to present after the discussion points. So would you please, before we start into discussing open things, could you please finish this? That is the feeling here in Cologne. Thanks.
Parfait. Donc,
Okay. Those points are the points that we would like to present so that you could think about them. And if you say that it would be better to do at the end, it would be much better. I'm sorry, this... The sound is so terrible. I'm very sorry. We are doing some guesswork here. So, next slide, please.
oui, alors,
Now we do not have any sound on the... Oh, here. So, in our discussions, in our working group 2, we also worked on the control or monitoring of that body. As I prepared my presentation today, I read again the Berahora judgment, and one of the contentious points or litigious points was in the paragraph 60 was the fact that there had been no motivation by the French public authorities to have not accepted the Spanish translation expert, sorry. And it hadn't been motivated why they had refused that expert. So I think that it is very important that some decisions of the body, whichever they are, should be motivated. Whether it's a decision taken by the body to strike somebody off of the register or to add somebody to the register, there should be some kind of monitoring and, if necessary, also the possibility to appeal that decision. even in front of the judiciary authorities. Any decision taken by public administration should comply with the rules of a fair trial.
Donc, il n'y a pas.
So there shouldn't be any doubt about that. But we were wondering who should be responsible for that monitoring to make sure that the decisions of that body, of the registering body, can be checked. And we saw, based on the questionnaire and the reality in different European countries, that usually it is the Ministry of Justice that is the public administration checking those decisions, or sometimes also the president of the Court of Appeal for Poland. Those two examples were those mentioned most frequently. Sometimes it is also a public office like the Ministry of Justice, or an organization depending of the Justice Administration and the courts, so the Court of Appeal here. Consequently, we here have different recommendations. And those seems for us fairly self-explanatory. We say that it would be preferable for the body to give the reasons for the decisions that was taken. And in our discussions, I said it's absolutely normal as a legal expert. It is obvious that every decision should be reasoned and motivated. That is, of course, one of the basic legal principles. And in our discussions, we also formulated as a recommendation that you should have an internal control or monitoring by the Ministry of Justice and of the registering body. And the internal decision could also be taken by the Ministry of Justice. But you should also have an external control by the administrative court for the specificity of, or according to the rules of each country. Because in our discussions, we saw that there are many different systems how to fight decisions from the public authorities. You have different contentious courts and public courts. So you have different administrative courts also. So depending on the different type of courts, you should adapt also the appeal of a decision should be adapted also to the judiciary situation of each country. Third party goes back to Sasha. It's about the register that is created by this body.
Sasha, quand tu veux.
These slides are primarily, is there one register, two, mixed? And we see from the numbers that they vary, of course. Also, a way of joining the register, way to register, various ways to joining. That is access. It's not joining, but access to, and have a. You can look at the register. It should be. 4 out of 21 countries, they have PDF documents. Well, that is really old school, but 11 out of 21 countries say there is indeed a digital search tool, and then you can have the discussion if that is made public or just for certain professions. So the access is, there are 2 countries that say that it's really restricted to professions, certain professionals, and more than half of the country say that it's accessible to the public. We also gathered some data that was to be found in the registers. The obvious ones are personal data, contact data, but profession, specialized knowledge or discipline, experience, that is a number of years, and many other variations. We recommend that it would be preferable to develop a single register. If you were to start all over, we would say it makes life easier if you have a single register. But we know that in most countries it's not the case, and it's not necessary to change that, but it's only if you would like to make do it all over again, you'd probably be best off with one register. And also accessible online and public. That is, the last slide is that it should be accessible to all the public, and it should be updated very regularly. Then we have some slides we call it added values. What's the plus of what we did? And Rafa will join me in this slide. I'll start with increasing transparency. If you have a register well managed by a body which is controlled, it adds to transparency. Next one, Rafa.
So, like we see on the second point, if we have certainly harmonized and clear definition of the different criteria for creating this body, that would also have a positive impact on the communication and transparency, and would also improve mutual trust in the judicial process. Because, as we say, if you harmonize the objective criteria for this body, the judges will also feel much more confident in the work of the experts on those lists or in this register, because the experts will fulfill a certain number of criteria. So I think this is something that is also very important for the status of judicial experts. And this is something that brings added value to such a body.
And the last one, it encourages European cooperation, cross-border cooperation, and well, I think that's it. Maybe it's best to open the discussion and just start with questions from you, and then if we have time, we can go back to our questions that we before formulated. Is there a question?
Yeah, thank you very much, first of all, you two, Rafa and Sasha, to give us this update.
Merci à vous.
And yeah, it's now your floor to ask questions. Please, just wait a second, I come to you.
Thank you. I have a rather specific question concerning
Deregistration.
Deregistration. if I understand correctly, you rely mainly on requests or complaints that are addressed to the body. But did you discuss the possibility to have a proactive evaluation of the experts by the parties and by the judges in order to make the body in a position to make a continuous reflection on the quality of the work of the experts?
Yeah. Rafa, you want to reflect on that, or shall I take this one?
Oui.
No problem. If I understood you correctly, the idea would be not to have only the opinion of the judges, but also those that would face with the concrete case where the expert intervened.
If you like, I think it's the question of working group 3. Yes, because they will show you how it works, what you can do proactively as a registration body concerning the quality of an expert who is registered. Is this the case, or is there anything to add?
Benoit, I'm looking at you. Are you covering this in the presentation, the proceedings and the information build up to deregister?
I'm not sure we're being very far into
No.
deregistration.
No.
The question was asked about
how to assess. Yeah.
But we have an open discussion.
Well, I think we will come back to this question then, if we will speak about yours then. And it was, sir? You.
I have the question. We experts, we must rate judge recommendation for the specific tools, research of experts, or this very range recommendation about system payment for experts, because who is the receptor of this recommendation? I think that is a public body, maybe European Commission, but it is something else that search for experts, like internet tools.
I think there are 3 aspects in one. I think we are speaking about the bodies now. What is their function? How do they work, and so on? And you are directly into the case if they have to use some kind of, let me see, materials or tools or something like this. I think this is a complete different question. And the last question that I would, if you allow, because it's some general thing, we are putting this to the European Union because the recommendations, we are sponsored by the European Union to give recommendations on this. And therefore, we address all these recommendations to the EU. But of course, they will be available to everybody in the European Union. And this is something we want to foster with this. Additional question, Mr. Voss.
Oui, et cette fois-ci, je vais...
So this time I will speak French, mostly since one of the speakers speaks French. I'm wondering whether it is necessary to have a recommendation who is in this body, because in that case we are really going into the sovereignty of the different member states, because every member state had its own tradition. In many other cases where we have European directives, where we have, for example, the creation of a banking supervisory or supervision organization, and we only have different criteria for this body, but not who should be in the body. Indeed, every member state should be able to decide upon that. We say that you should have associations. Well, in some member states, it's not possible. You need to have only physical persons. And then the question of lawyers in such a body. In some countries, it's absolutely unthinkable to have lawyers for whatever reasons. So I'm asking for the following question: is it necessary to go so deeply into details in the recommendations? Shouldn't it be enough to have a body that has fulfills different criteria that are necessary, so that are justified by general interest, the respect of the individual rights, and so on and so forth, but not going into such detail? Rafa, tu veux répondre? First, I don't think it's necessary, but as a recommendation, it's not something we are forcing onto anybody.
Différents.
It's a criteria we developed in our conversations within the working group. And we had members from different professions: judges, lawyers, experts, legal experts. So I think it's important just to present what we discussed in our meetings. And it's just a recommendation. It's nothing we are imposing. We know that every country has its own reality, its own standards, its own regulations. So the questions will be only to adapt the recommendations we are making, and that the European Commission will hopefully agree on, and that every country adapt it to its own reality. If you think that we cannot make any recommendations because every country has its own reality, but then we wouldn't be able to do anything, or not much at all.
Now, I think it's clear that we of course, we realize that the pays, I start French now, the countries of the European Union have their traditions. But I think it was good to make them transparent how it could work. And you spoke about some minimum criteria, and I think it's good to see what countries from the others could learn on this. But we have to think about all these things again. But at least we have now a basis to discuss on this. Yeah. So thank you very much. I think, well, we spoke about the European Commission, and I think it's a good time to say hello to them, because they are joining us today. Joanna, are you with us? Can we have them? Well, we have all the participants outside. Normally we could have...
Not yet, not yet.
Not yet? Okay, so perhaps after lunch then, okay? No problem. Well, I think, are there any other questions on this subject? If not, I would raise the question again. You spoke about this public thing, because that was something I was surprised to see, that a few countries only said the lists or the registers are not open to the public. Yeah. Is this fostering transparency in Europe? I haven't understood this, because perhaps we want to create a common search engine, and we do not have those people then. I think the group was clear on this.
Is your question why these countries chose to make it restricted?
Perhaps you have a reason, or however, if you do not have a reason, I do not either.
I don't know. No,
yeah.
I don't really know why.
Mm-hmm. But the group thinks that it's really
better.
There's no objection against this. Yeah. Okay. So I was also interested to see the members, because this was also something which Mr. Defors was raising the question. I found it very interesting to include, don't call it members, but personnel who do the work in the end, that the proposal is to have all the stakeholders in a case. Is this the recommendation? Because you said perhaps there are some countries who do not want lawyers, for example.
We have presented the possibilities, but we did not want to say you need a judge or but you can choose from this variety. That was the intention.
Mm. Yeah. And is there experience on this? Is this a positive way for those countries who are acting like this?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was in the working group. There was experience with that, and we shared it, and we added value. Yes.
Mm. Great. Other question, if there are no, because I was surprised to see that you want one register for one country. This is the proposal of the group, and we know the reality, so yes. We are far away from this. Does it mean the registration process has to be done centralized, or the data have to be published centralized?
That's a good question, Bernard. We answered it in the way that it is managed at one point. And that is from our personal experience that you see the difficulties if you have different registers with different criteria, with different proceedings, and it makes life not easy. So that's purely from a practical point of view that we said make it your life easy and just organize it at one point. But that's the data is another thing, actually, if you just focus on that. But we did not speak about that in depth.
Rafa?
Oui, c'est ça. C'est vrai que la réalité de chaque pays.
Yes. The reality in each country is such that there is a unique territorial solution, and it means that sometimes it is necessary to have more than one register. But it could be possible also to have a single directory and with several chapters, for example, per location, and indicate on this or in this register that one expert can be called upon in one region or in one part of the country, for example, in Catalonia or in the whole of Spain, instead of creating various or several registers like we have at the moment in Spain or in Germany. So in our group, we thought that it would be easier to manage one register, and in this register to add the geographical criteria. There is no contradiction with the geographical or political criteria that already exists in some countries.
Benoit, just a second, I come to you for the microphone.
Bonjour, je suis Benoît de Clercq, expert.
Good morning, my name is Benoît de Clercq. I'm a judiciary expert in France and also president of the EE. I am going to ask my question in French. I saw in your recommendations that the main function of the body in charge of the register with the registration, deregistration, and re-registration, that you also allowed for support from outside or external experts. So the question I want to ask is, in the secondary functions also, did you consider a disciplinary function such as the one that we have, for example, for professional orders or chambers like we already have for doctors? So these orders, professional orders, have a disciplinary function, and radiation of from a register is a disciplinary measure. So do you have, or did you consider that such a disciplinary function can be entrusted to such a body in charge of the registers?
vous voulez. Sacha,
But
you
one
want to say
after
something
another,
about
please.
that?
Sorry, did you give?
Moi, on avait
Well, we have a recommendation for the body that says that it should create its own statutes. Therefore, I believe that in these statutes, the body can establish, and the question has been discussed in our work, so it can establish a transparent procedure with the possibility for the person to be sanctioned to present its own or her own or their own view. It has been discussed in our working group, and perhaps this could be included in the recommendation to create statutes or define statutes for such a body that include a disciplinary procedure, and also to define the type of sanctions. Apart from deregistration, so that could be envisaged, but this would be included in the body's statutes, in my view. Sacha, do you want to add something?
Please. Sorry, Jean-Raymond, I thought you would say I have to go to lunch now. So that's why but we can come to you in a second.
Du coup, je vais prendre la parole aussi.
I'm also going to talk in French. In my view, the fact that somebody can be registered in a register or in directory according to its qualification is different and very different from sanctioning that person, like deregistering that person from the list, just because this person hasn't done their work properly. So we come back here to the way the body is organized, because to me it is a different function. Second remark, a sanction towards an expert that doesn't do their work properly will be the cancellation or the non-taken into consideration of their expert report. So if we entrust such a body with a disciplinary function, that might be a clash with the court's disciplinary measure. So I'm quite hesitant with introducing such an option in the statutes.
Most important people sit.
Thanks a lot. Oui, je parle en tant que...
I speak as a former president of an expert company. Well, if you want to sanction or suspend an expert, you cannot inform the jurisdictions. Therefore, it is very difficult. And as soon as the information becomes public, the lawyers of the parties concerned intervene, and they want to know why the expert has been cancelled, refused, sanctioned. So the only sanction that is possible would be deregistration from the list or erasing, deleting the name from the list. That's all. I would like to add something, if I may. In our work, we didn't say that we should set up a sanction or disciplinary regime. I was just thinking right now that when there is
les membres de l'organisme, par exemple, pourraient décider de créer.
When there is a case or disagreement, you can send the case to an external party whose task would be to analyze the case and make a decision. So So it doesn't mean we deregister the person, and it doesn't mean also that, or either that the people have, or the same people have to be in charge of the registration, deregistration, and disciplinary measure. So if you designate an expert, perhaps you need external parties or experts, legal experts, to decide the deregistration.
Between disciplinary law as a judicial expert or disciplinary law as the technical professional. One is complaining about its profession, that he did not calculate 1 and 1 is 2. And the other disciplinary law about judicial expertise is about he did not respect the adversarial principle. He did not respect the party's place. So disciplinary law with the body should not look at the business part, but should look at the acting as an expert. And there you can deregister a person if they do not work according to procedural law.
Thank you very much. Just to conclude this idea and the ideas that I got, because in your recommendation I saw something like that there should be an appeal process. And this is, as far as I learned from your recommendation and from your data, is based on administration law in most of the countries who register, and if you are data registered, you can go to an administrational court. Is this and that shows that there is already in many countries a distinction between disciplinary directly and final decision on this. Because the registration body will say, we do not accept you anymore because you do not fulfill the criteria anymore. But you can go to, finally it's decided by an administrational court, in my opinion.
It's a decision.
Subject to this organization is not a private one. Yeah, but I think those who are mandated by law in the countries have this kind of system.
Yes.
And so it shows there is already some kind of distinction between disciplinary and final decision of a court, in my opinion. Okay, Mr. DeVos, I forgot, sorry.
Je voudrais dire, je partage les...
I wanted to say that I share the hesitations from my Luxembourg colleague. We must beware to move too quickly on this. Because even if we have experts from a profession where there is an order, a professional order, we need to consider the party that we lose in the process, and then it might start litigating against the expert that gave a negative opinion. And we, at this stage, where we are setting up some rules or some recommendations for some mechanisms or rules at the European level, I think we need, at this stage, let the judge who appoints the expert, even if it's in an appeal court, that he has the monopoly of sanctioning the expert, if necessary, as it has been said, by cancelling the expert's report or reducing his fees or taking other measures that might be many more efficient than any measures we could add in the procedure. So I really share my Luxembourg colleague's view on this and his hesitations. I'm not sure that the judge has the capacity, this exclusive ability to sanction the expert, because a judge is already making a stand when writing his judgment. He can say and write that the expert opinion is not sufficiently supported by concrete criteria. So I'm not convinced that the judge has the exclusive competence for a disciplinary measure towards the experts, such as deregistration of the expert. We need to add something. For example, an expert in their field. We need somebody, another expert from their field, who can say if the conclusions of the expert's opinion can be supported or not, and this by very impartial and concrete criteria.
From Germany, and I'm a judge, and I think we have a little bit of misunderstanding because it's two different things. One thing is there's a registration, and then there's the board says we want to deregister somebody, and then he can appeal against that. And then the second question, and I agree with the two of you, what we must not have is that we deregister someone in the board, and that means for the judge that decides the actual case between the parties, the judge's statement is not valid anymore. So if that is the case in one of the member states, we can't have that as a result. So what the boards can do is the deregistration, and if that puts the courts in danger that have to decide the actual case of the parties, that we must be a little bit careful. So we should be careful what we recommend on that matter. So I think it's two different things that we have to take into account.
Thank you.
I would also just like to give the point of view of the parties as a lawyer, because we, of course, when the case gets bad or the expertise is not running well, we need the possibility to have somebody to say there is something wrong here. It is not obligatory the registration body. It may be a judge in the national procedure, and I think in most of the countries this will be the case. But this is important that there is this possibility. Maybe not in the registration body. Yeah.
Okay, last question.
Thank you. I'm Daniela Ilic from Serbia. I will speak later at the next presentation, but yes, my question is the registration body is in all not the same as an issuer of decision on a court experts. So, for instance, in some countries, Ministry of Justice issues the certificate or decision on court expert, and also they keep registers. So within this project, we recommend that there should be a register as a separate body of issuer or not, because disciplinary matters are on the issuer side. And as I understand, this registration manages actually administrative and formal requirements, proof of formal requirements. For instance, deregistration from registry can happen if formal requirements are not met. For example, CPD, at the renewal, applicant didn't attend CPD for many years, so the registering body can deregister, and so on. For instance, liability insurance and so on. But for other things, the issuer should manage disciplinary things.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would you like to add something? I think it was very clear from
clear.
Daniela, and she summarized all what we have again. And therefore, I think there is a consensus on this, because we're speaking about a consensus conference. And I hope that there is some kind of consensus now that we go